There's some preachers, there's some authors, there's some people who write, and when you tell their stories, you can just tell the story. But for me, Fred Craddock is not one of those. And I hate reading to you because you're so bad to fall asleep when I'm reading. But I just have to read. And when you know his inflection, you sort of kind of adopt it. You can hear Fred saying this, so maybe I can somehow convey that to you. This is a story from Craddock Stories. The great preacher, Fred B. Craddock, writes, "My mother took us to church and to Sunday school, and my father," can you finish the sentence? "Didn't go. He complained about Sunday dinner being late when she came home, and sometimes the preacher would call, and my father would say, 'I know what the church wants.'" What do you think he thought? Church doesn't care about me. Church just wants another name on the roll and another pledge. Another name, another pledge, right? Yeah, that's what they always want. Isn't that the name of it? Another name, another pledge. That's what he always said. Sometimes we'd have a revival and the pastor would bring the evangelist and say to the evangelist, "There's one now. Sick him. Get him. Get him." And my father would say the same thing every time. And my poor mother in the kitchen, always nervous, in fear of flaring tempers and somebody being hurt. And always my father said, "The church doesn't care about me. The church wants another name, another pledge." I guess I heard it 1,000 times. One time, he didn't say it. He was in the Veterans Hospital, and he was down to 73 pounds. They'd taken out his throat and said it's too late. They put in a metal tube and x-rays that burned him to pieces, and I flew in to see him. He couldn't speak, he couldn't eat. I looked around the room, potted plants and cut flowers on all the window sills, and a stack of cards 20 inches deep beside his bed. And even that tray where they put the food, if you can eat, on that tray was a flower. All the flowers beside the bed, every card, every blossom, were from persons or groups from the church. He saw me read a card and he couldn't speak. So he took a Kleenex box and he wrote on the side of it a line from Shakespeare. If he had not written this line, I would not tell you this story. He wrote this: "In this harsh world, draw your breath in pain to tell my story." I said, "What, Daddy? What is your story?" And he wrote, "I was wrong." Who are you praying for? Who are you praying for? Is there some situation in your life that you're pleading with God to change? And isn't this the question? Do you ever wonder, why doesn't God hurry? Peter's letter reminds the reader and reminds us today that God is patient, and that we are to regard the patience of God as salvation. But it is really so hard to wait. We don't always act with patience. Do you ever think that God must be disappointed? I want to be patient. I've even been complimented by people on patience, and I've had to correct them and say, I'm not very patient at all. No matter what it looks like on the outside, there's a conflict in the waiting, and I often fall, and I often do the wrong thing, and I most often say exactly what I shouldn't say, and I'm very, very good at making the same mistake twice, even 3 and 4 times. Is that your story? And don't you think that God is... You haven't had a lot of time, little man, to make too many mistakes yet. But somebody in here is honest anyway. And do you ever think that God must be very disappointed with us for being so hard to learn? There's a story in William Paul Young's book called The Shack. I know many of you have read that book. And in The Shack, there is a character that is God in the book. And then there is the author who is having an encounter with God. And he speaks to the God character and he says, you must be disappointed because I keep making the same mistakes. I keep falling over and over. And then God says to the author this, I know you think I must be disappointed, even discouraged, but you see, you don't know where the point for transformation takes place, but I do. And I know how many times you must fall before we get to that point. And so while you may feel sorrowful for your mistake, I am rejoicing that we are one step closer. You're almost there, my child. Keep going. Now, I don't know how to be patient, because what I've discovered is that patience is a series of consecutive days of impatiently waiting for something to happen. When you pray for patience, you should expect that. And I don't know if God really knows everything that I'm going to do, or if I have enough free will to perhaps maybe surprise God occasionally. I love what Meister Eckhart once said. When I was young, I was shocked to find out I was wrong, and as I got older, I was pleasantly surprised whenever I was right. But the question is still there. Why doesn't God hurry? If you're like me, I'm praying for my situation. I'm praying for people. I'm praying for the congregation. And God seems to be more patient than me. Some things just take time. I visited with my ex-wife this week, and something really profound hit me. She is not angry at me anymore, and I am not angry at her. And I won't burden you with the details of her condition today and how many things have happened over the course of the years, but there was a time, I will just assure you, when both of us were quite angry at each other, and I wanted to let it go, and I said it out of my mouth over and over, I forgive you, and I had to just keep saying it until, glory to God, last week I realized it's finally true. And it's true for her too. Is there someone you are struggling to forgive right now? Then just keep trying. Just keep saying it over and over, because someday, in the good time of God and in His wisdom and patience, it will be true. You don't get to decide. Some things just take time. Recovery takes time. Did you know that? And in recovery, people will tell you that almost everyone will relapse before they finally move into true recovery. And so what is it for you now if you were that addict and relapse? Is this the last one? Are you going to celebrate tomorrow the victory of moving beyond recovery and relapse and into recovery and victory? Maybe this is the last time you'll stumble toward your recovery. Some things just take time, folks. Transformation takes time. In some ways, religion in the Western world has failed us. It didn't happen the Sunday that you confessed faith, although that was a great day and it was a watershed in your life of faith. It didn't happen when you got out of the water, so the old elder who said if it didn't all get dunked, it didn't take. Well, it takes a while for it to take, no matter how long they hold you under. Transformation takes time. And you know what else it takes? It takes practice. Just keep saying it over and over. I love you, I forgive you, I love you, I forgive you, and I am not afraid, because none of those things may be true today. And I don't know if God knows the future or what you will do tomorrow or what I will choose, but I know this. I'm certain that in time God will grant us if we're patient. Well, it's hard to wait, because waiting is uneasy and unrestful. And what we really want in the waiting is peace, let's face it. When we pray for patience, what we really want is peace. What we really want is to be able to draw breath and to say, I am okay in this moment. And it takes practice. You know, the opposite of peace is not war. The opposite of peace is not violence. The opposite of peace is fear. And that's what we struggle with. The fear within us. And Jesus speaks to our fears. Jesus says a lot about fear. Jesus says many, many times in the Gospels, don't be afraid. And Jesus repeats a phrase from the Old Testament when he says that we should not be afraid of the things of this world or the people of this world who threaten us, but only fear the one who has the victory over our death. That would be God and God alone. And so it's easy to take that statement and say, then God is to be feared. But in His very life, in His very ministry, Jesus comments further to say that even God is not fearsome. You understand? Don't fear the things around you. Fear only God, who is so gentle with you. That for every time we deny and attack God, God simply turns to us the other cheek, absorbing our attack. For every time that we cheapen grace and use God's mercy to our benefit, God simply pours out more. Tom Lyda said it best in looking at the cross. I think God got out of the punishment business at least 2,000 years ago. But fear can cripple us. Fear can hurt us. When I was in California in October and listening to Rob Bell, he did an entire session on this topic. How do you handle criticism? And for him, it's a very vibrant topic because since he wrote the book Love Wins, he's been heavily criticized, even to the point of retiring from his job and moving his family 1,000 miles away to a new place and starting over and seeking to further his own ministry. And I have to think to myself, how do I handle it when ministers in this community criticize me or my congregation? How do I handle it when people inside the congregation grow critical? How do you handle criticism? And the hardest criticism to handle is that which comes from the people that we look for affirmation, the people we look to hold us up when we have trouble believing even in ourselves. You know, I'm reminded that sometimes when people criticize me and I immediately want to resist it, it's maybe because something they're telling me is true of myself, and I don't want to know that. And then for all of that other stuff that they pile on there that really does not have any bearing on me, I'm reminded that beyond the criticism, I'm a child of God, and there is no reason or need to explain myself, but we do, don't we? Out of fear, we explain and try to justify it and clear it up and turn it back around and make it look good. Are you afraid? If God would only act quickly, would that help with your fear? Because the future is so uncertain. May I tell you, I am afraid. I am scared. I am afraid that my children may not turn out to have productive lives and not live well. I fear for their future. I fear for each decision that they make. Do you know someone like me? I am afraid that the bank will eventually take away all of the equity in my house, that bankruptcy looms over me from poor financial decisions in my past, and that I may someday be left penniless to start what should be my retirement years beyond when I can work productively. Do you know anyone like me? I am afraid and scared that the people who love me the most may leave me. I'm afraid that if I wind up penniless and powerless, I wonder if my children, even my wife, love me enough to sustain through that kind of failure and hardship. I fear that if my health fails, I may be a burden to others and they may abandon me. Do you know anyone who shares those fears? I don't even know how to preach peace. All I can ask you today is please don't judge the messenger. Just listen to the message, because there is hope and a peace in knowing that God is in control. But I don't even know that. And that's the most responsible thing I know to tell you today. Maybe you wanted me to say, oh, certainly, people, I'm the preacher, I read the Bible, I even went to seminary for a couple of days, and you want to know that God is in control, but really, would that solve this thing? Would that bring you peace? God seems to be more interested in faith than fact. So while I won't tell you today that I can know, I will tell you this, that my faith can sustain me beyond even what my mind may know to be true. And faith can move me through every fear that seeks to destroy my relationship with God and with my family and with my congregation and in the community and even with my enemies. And God bless them, for they may be the most honest people with me in the whole world. They alone have the courage to show me something about myself that I do not want to know. And I can tell you this, that faith is the cure for fear. It's not in the knowing. It is in the faith that God is in control. It is in our faith that rests in God's ability to address our situation, to hear our prayers and to answer and to calm every fear within us. Faith in this God who takes my doubt and simply pours out more blessing, who takes my assault and my anger and simply turns the other cheek, and who, when I cheapen grace and abuse it all the more, simply pours out more, like throwing every belonging at the thief who would break in the night. It is your faith that will bring you the other peace that Jesus talked about. Peace that surpasses all understanding. Peace that transcends what you know to be true. On this Sunday of peace, may our souls find rest in the mercy of God poured out in the love of Jesus Christ. You are His disciples. You children of God. Fear not. Pray with me.